Top of the hour, start our meeting. Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Cody, roll call, please.
Supervisor Gunning?
Here.
Treasurer Rice?
Here.
Trustee Hauk?
Here.
Trustee Micus?
Here.
Trustee Lannon?
Here.
Trustee Worley?
Here.
Clerk Cody here.
All right. Which brings us up to item 4, which is approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second?
Motion and a second. Discussion? Seeing none. All in favor of the agenda as is, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda approved. We move to item 7, which is going to be public comment. This is going to be restricted to 3 minutes regarding items on this agenda only. Questions to the board will not be answered at this time. If anyone would like to come forward for our first public comment section.
Wondering about item H, that purchasing a Kubota vehicle. Did you look, and I know you don't have to answer this, but had you look at leasing it rather than buying it? And I guess the question is, if it's for the water treatment plant, I'm sure Union Townships have enough trucks that they could probably have one around that they could run back and forth if they're going someplace else. But $23,000 is a lot of money, and maybe you ought to look at leasing it for a period of time rather than have to have the expense, and of course depreciation and so on. So.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehead. Any more public comment?
No, not this time.
All right. Any further? We've got 2 people in. We have public comment right now, folks. If either of you would like to speak during the public comment section, this would be items on our agenda only. All right. Seeing none for public comment, we close public comment. And we move to item 8, which is reports and board comments. We have 1 EDA appointment. It would be Cheryl Hunter's term is expiring on the 22nd of June. She has applied to renew her status on the EDA. And I would like to nominate Ms. Hunter for that position, being a business owner, in particular and a resident of the township. I think her contributions to the EDA are significant. She always has thoughts that are well thought out. She attends the meetings, and I think she is very conscientious. So I would like to nominate Cheryl Hunter for the opening in EDA. This position is a 4-year term, so this would put it to 6/22 of 2023.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the nomination of Cheryl Hunter to the EDA for a term to terminate on 6/22/2023.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Did you receive any other applications for the position?
No. We just had the 1 application.
Well,
I like her sense of humor when she listed her occupation as serial entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah, I think she's a real good candidate. She's been very active on the board, a good contributing member, so certainly a good person. So.
Good community member.
Any further comments? Okay, at this time, this would be to verify the position of Cheryl Hunter on the EDA, expiration date 6/22 of 2023. All in favor of Cheryl Hunter appointing her onto that board, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Thank you. I'll let Ms. Hunter know that she's been affirmed. We move now from the EDA expiration to board reports. Let's start, I suppose, with Mr. Worley.
Alrighty. In terms of the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe, as you all know by now, on May 30th, we did receive a 2% distribution grant for $150,000 for the Pathway Connector, which is the Part B going from Denison to the ballpark. Just so you know a little bit more about it, the tribe dispersed about $2,162,000, and there were 367 requests, and 100 projects were funded, and we were one of them. So myself, Ben, Mark was in attendance. We accepted the gift with a lot of appreciation and gratitude for that. I think that's going to go a long way. Secondly, on June 6th, last Thursday, every June 6th, the tribe has a honoring, healing, and remembering service that takes place over at the Mount Pleasant Indian Industrial Boarding School. And basically it's to honor the spirits of the children that had died while there. Altogether, there were 227 documented deaths during the time that the school existed. And it's both a solemn ceremony and it's also one that's a celebration of life. The neat thing is that there were tribal members from different tribes from all over the United States, from Canada. There were guest speakers, so it's an all-day activity, and so again, just in response to everything they're doing for us, it's something I like to do each year of going to the service, and that's it.
Thank you, Norm.
You're welcome.
Lisa?
At the last city meeting, they swore in a new police officer, Joshua Laudenslager. There was a presentation by McKenna for the 2050 master plan. They passed an ordinance to temporarily prohibit the recreational marijuana establishments. That's about it.
All right. Very good, thank you. Kim?
Had a meeting with the tax team, and so taxes are underway, and they will be in mailboxes by July 1st.
Right.
So,
Very good.
yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Houck?
I went to a road commission meeting on the 23rd. There's another one tomorrow. Went to the last one May 23rd. During public comment, I brought up Crawford Road. Kim, you asked me to bring it up, so I brought it up.
Thank you.
They said right now that's not on their radar, and putting sidewalk along there, and it would, they figured it'd be a minimum of an $800,000 project. They would have to seek easements. Some of those houses are very close to the road. But right now, they said that's not on their radar. Township roads have been brined for the first time. They just put another military truck on the road. I think these are pretty cool when they get those military trucks. This last one, it had I think it was 2,300 miles on it when they got it. And I'm pretty sure they purchased it for like $19,000. And they get these things out on the road. I think they said it was $120,000 they get them out on the road for. When they buy a new one, it's closer to $250,000. So they're looking for more of those. So they're nice trucks too. So that's it.
Hey, Bill, question for you. How do you feel that we get Crawford Road on the radar? I know it's a multi-jurisdictional road, so it's a little more
I'll
complicated.
keep saying it, like I've said it before, it's personal responsibility. There's some roads, maybe I'm a jerk here, but some roads just can't have sidewalk on them. I mean, it's gonna be impossible to do it. And there's been a lot of promises made during the campaign that we're gonna get sidewalk down that road.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when I was out campaigning the last time, I mean, you feel for people. But I know I'd knock on doors down Crawford Road, and there were current people on this board that promised people that they were gonna get them a sidewalk. And that can't happen unless we have many agencies get together, many meetings. I don't know how it can happen.
Well, I don't see how we get sidewalks because of where the houses are, but my question is just the road itself, is getting the ditches closed in, maybe have a wide shouldered road, I
Right,
think is
well, that's what
possible.
Norman said
Yeah,
too, and I
Yeah.
mentioned
we
that.
talked about it a couple months ago, Bill and I,
Yeah.
and I see it as a possibility that would not be too expensive. You know, in the going through the master plan, we talk both about roadways in which there's a high vehicular traffic, and to allow for better traffic flow, we increase the speed limit, we widen the road, you have shoulders, and that allows that. In areas, though, where you have vehicular and pedestrian bike interaction, the idea, according to the master plan, is to try to find a way to slow down the traffic flow and then do something in terms of perhaps a shouldering. So what I'd spoke to Bill maybe, I don't know, 2 months ago, and I know you were going to talk to Tony about the possibility, was that maybe one thing there is if we, and I've gone up and down that and checked, it seems to me there's enough room on both sides where we could at least widen the shoulder. That'd be number one.
Yeah.
So at least you get people off that immediate pavement area of the road. Secondly, I think it would be important that the traffic, that the speed limit be reduced to 45 miles an hour. So that's what you do wherever there's a vehicular and pedestrian bike interaction. The one of the solutions in that, and it's not the best, but it's better than nothing, is to widen the shoulders, reduce the speed of the vehicles. So I'm wondering if we could at least look into that possibility of widening the shoulders, and then see, and I don't know if that's MDOT or who does the speed limit.
State police.
Yeah, state police, and then see about getting that reduced to 45. The other thing is that maybe if we just had an overlay on that section of the road as well, you know, it gives vehicles more stability, you know, so again, you're avoiding going off on the shoulder area.
It is crowded.
So there is some things I think we can do that doesn't get into that $800,000 cost, which right now might be very prohibitive, but we can do things that, my feeling is that, you know, wherever we can reduce the incidence of what happened with that tragic accident a couple of years ago, I think it's certainly within our means, and it's within our capability to do that. So
Maybe looking at, because of the tragedy, I think that I'm sure grants would also be possible in that. I know that when we talked in the past about doing something similar on this road, the question is when you get to the shoulders, the construction isn't the same as underneath the road.
right.
So putting just shoulders and paving it isn't really a viable option. So I think it ended up being more money, but I do think that the amount of traffic on that road, the narrowness of that road, the deepness of the ditches, the large trees that aren't that far off the road, the amount of houses, I think there's a lot of issues there. But I think instead of, my personal thought is, and you know, this can move forward after this, after make this statement, but I think that instead of just saying that it can't be done, is maybe try to make it happen. You know, I mean, that would be my mindset, because it really should be addressed, I think. But it's gonna be tough because you got CMU, Mount Pleasant, and then
Right.
Union Township,
You have
all
different
involved in this,
jurisdictions.
and the road commission.
But that could also be a plus, because then you have 3 jurisdictions that might be all interested in doing this, along with maybe that would be 2% grant money as well. So there would be some, or even maybe some MDOT money, you know, there may be some possibilities there.
Yeah.
You know, that's a country road that was built years ago for, you know, people going up and down the road to get from one neighborhood to another. It wasn't made to accommodate the type of traffic flow. That's almost like a thoroughfare now at this point with the type of traffic. So,
Exactly.
so maybe, I don't know if you talked to Tony, had talked to Tony about that, you know, or does that might be something that would be feasible, and if
Yeah,
we
that's
might
what we
work
talked
with CMU and with the city and with the tribe on that, I think that would be certainly a worthwhile pursuit, if nothing else.
And I think what they need to know from us is it a priority?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the main thing is reducing the speed, and I think we would have to request that, right, Mark, from the state police?
There's a process that we'd go through to do that. I'd suggest you put this item out until we next talk about our goal setting, and if there's consensus on the board that they want to make this in some fashion a priority, that would be the time to,
Okay.
I think, get into deep discussion on it.
That is my goal on H, but one of my goals on H, as a matter of fact, so we're on the same page.
It's mine.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Bill.
Mr. Micus, you're up.
Hey, thank you, Ben. I attended the Sidewalk Committee meeting on June 3rd, and information about the funding from the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribal 2% Fund for completion of that alternate pathway, or enhancing an alternate pathway off of Crawford, was received and recognized. I like that alternate pathway. I like how that alternate pathway that we're helping fund, and I like how that alternate pathway developed when all the jurisdictions involved in Crawford Road and the safety of Crawford Road put their heads together, and their available resources and their professional resources to develop this alternate that's in the works. I think it's a great asset to the community personally. Also, at that sidewalk and pathways prioritization committee meeting, we approved the language for a letter that the committee will send out to property owners on Bluegrass Road, asking them to consider providing an easement for the completion of sidewalks on the north side of Bluegrass Road. We also discussed goals and future actions for 2019. We didn't get into it a lot because of the length of the meeting, but at the future meetings, by the way, the next one is first Monday in July, items that will be put on the list are items that will be discussed to prioritize future projects and future recommendations that the committee will make to this board regarding things such as township fund expenditures for future sidewalks. Some of the areas that I passed along was the Crawford Road, Harris Street stretch up and around the dog park. Also, of course, the Crawford Road issue was presented by others. And at that meeting, too, I brought forward the section of on Bluegrass Road immediately east of the Target property, that right-of-way stretch where there isn't a sidewalk. And so the staff will be getting some information back to us about ownership of that, and some information on future, here's a pun, a future pathway to take towards getting that finished. Again, I just want to clarify that these weren't decisions made. They were an accumulation of a list, create a list. And this is the process the committee's going through to then prioritize this inventory of possible additional sidewalks and pathways.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any questions for Phil? Mr. Lannon?
Yeah, a comment. Although I was unable to attend the Union Township Recycling Days this past Saturday, I understand that it was a great success. A lot of people came through, and fortunately we had a few strong guys there to do a bunch of lifting, because there's some terrific stories out there. And who was there would probably share some more of those stories in the tail end of our meeting comments. I did attend the Isabella County Board of Commissioners regular board meeting on June 4th. A couple of things that went on there was the Director of Operations, Jason McDonald, Director of Operations for the Michigan Medical Mobile Ambulance Service here in the county, was in and gave a presentation to the county board members. He highlighted a number of things. One thing that's real good for MMR is they are the sole ambulance service provider for the whole county, where in a number of other counties, they or other ambulance services operate. It can be fragmented. Certain townships may utilize one or two ambulance service, other townships, MMR. So anyways, for the county utilizing them completely, the township and the counties throughout the county, it allows them to operate at a more economical cost rate, and even in some areas of higher population, they really can operate at a no-cost service. And so he highlighted some of the wonderful things with the relationship of MMR and the county. Also, the board approved to establish the tax rate at 6.16 mils, which is consistent with what's been the millage rate over the past year. Also, there was a revision to the Great Lakes Bay 911 Consortium of Intergovernmental Agreement, and that Mark Griffith, the director of Isabella County 911 Central Dispatch, was there, and the addendum had to do with the adding of Central Michigan University to that consortium group. And then beyond that, I did have an opportunity to take a morning bike ride and drag my wife along with me, and we went and enjoyed the sunrise services at the Bamber Cemetery that took place, along with what Norm was talking about with the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe and the honoring, healing, and remembering of is actually in celebration too the 85th anniversary of the closing of the industrial boarding school that still has buildings on Harris Crawford. And so that was a really inspirational sunrise service taking place at the cemetery. A number of traditional Native American stories were told, and there were chiefs from numerous areas, 3 out of various Canadian provinces, as they work on their alliance as Anishinaabe people and trying to understand their strengths as a group. But so that's what I've been up to since our last meeting.
All right. Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
All right, this moves us out of item 8 and into item 9, which is going to be the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second.
And I did review the accounts payable today.
All right. I had a question, I guess, on number 8, because we did have a resident bring it up, was the question on a lease option on a utility vehicle. Was that something that we did look into at all? Is there cost savings involved with a leasing of a vehicle as opposed to purchasing a new?
And this is an item on the consent agenda?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, H.
Right, so there wasn't any request to remove that from the consent agenda, so
No, just basically it was an approval. We
Right.
didn't approve it yet, so.
I think one thing, just to maybe chime in on this, is that that's for the 2019 Kubota utility vehicle,
Mhm.
for purchase of that. But also, as you read through the information, that the They currently have a 2008 cab that is going to now go over to Parks and Rec. And so it's been maintained well. They've done, despite its age, it's been well maintained, et cetera. So that's going to go to Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec has been budgeted for $5,000 to purchase that. So the net for this vehicle is actually 23 minus the 5. So the net for the vehicle comes to 18,160. So it's less than what's on here as you read through the materials. So it provides then a new vehicle for the services that are needed out at the water plant and things like that. But in the same token, the current vehicle is being was assessed at 5,000. They're getting to 5,000, and that will continue to be used by Parks and Rec. So it's distributing our fleet around and using it accordingly. So.
Yeah, we had a resident that asked the question,
Yes.
and I think it was a pertinent question, so I just wanted to have a response if that was something that we had looked into.
Can I say something?
Yes.
The last one was about, 20 years old. So if you, figure out the math, it's about $1,100 a year, for this one, if it lasts a good 20, which would be cheaper than leasing it.
Okay. Again, resident asked a question. It'd be nice to answer the question if that was looked into as an option or not. That was all his question was.
As we get used to the new format with items on the consent agenda and all that, I'd be happy to answer that question. 'Cause
Yeah, that'd be
in the past,
good.
that would
Just,
be on the regular agenda.
I think it's important to
but,
answer questions.
We want to be conscious of what we're using the consent agenda for. and
Certainly.
But at any rate, we do not lease vehicles in the township historically. We keep our vehicles a pretty long time, as was mentioned here, at least particularly in the case of this vehicle that's being replaced. It was 2008 that was bought to replace a 2000 that we then reappropriated, if you will, within the organization. We own these vehicles 10 years or so, and so financially it wouldn't make sense to lease it.
Okay. All right. Question answered, right? All right, so on the consent agenda, we have a motion and a second. Any further questions? Payables have been checked.
Yep.
Okay, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Move on to new business. First item up is approval of SUB 2019-01, preliminary plat review of the amending the plat of Village of Isabella City located at River Road.
This item, the paperwork for this in your agenda packet starts on page 61. You may recall that previously, maybe 3 months ago now, the township acted to abandon and vacate certain roads in this old existing plat. As part of that then, in trying to facilitate the development, the court has ordered, in the judgments in your packet, the court ordered an amendment to that existing plat. And they described it in the court order that starts on page 77 of your agenda packet. And because of that, what we're doing here tonight and what the Planning Commission basically did earlier or last month is more perfunctory in nature than anything else. We have an ordinance that requires Board of Trustee review and approval of preliminary and final plat amendments. And so we're going through that exercise, but I want you to recognize that there's been a judgment made as to what these lots are going to look like, how big they are, what their numbering scheme is, and all of that. And that is shown on page 95 of your packet as Exhibit F of the judgment. With that said, the Planning Commission looked at this item at their May 21 meeting. They approved the preliminary plat. Recommendation to the Board of Trustees that you all approve it. And so that's why it's here tonight. There'll be a second round, both in front of the Planning Commission and the Board of Trustees for final plat approval, so you'll be looking at this again. But again, we're just kind of checking the boxes as a result of the court order and wanting to eliminate any possibility down the road that some claim will be made that our ordinance wasn't followed.
All right.
Applications were made by the applicant, fees paid, by the way.
With that in mind, Ben, if I may, I'd make the motion to approve the SUB 2019-01 preliminary plat review, amending the plat of the Village of Isabella City located on River Road, South River Road.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion?
We've had this before us once or twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's been fully reviewed with all the I's dotted and T's crossed.
And as I think, as we said last time, it's nice to see some development
Yeah.
going north in the old Dogtown area, and I think this is going to be a nice project to get some more development up there and getting that area spruced up as well. So, yeah.
I find it as a interesting history lesson
Yeah.
to look at what was proposed, the work you can see that went into it, that never really came to fruition. All the streets were named, alleyways were created. So it's kind of a ghost town that didn't really happen. But yeah, I will support the motion on the floor.
I concur. It'd be nice to see something on that end of town. All right. Further discussion? All right, so we take this up for vote. This would be to approve SUB 2019-01 preliminary plat review, amending the plat of Village of Isabella City, located at South River Road. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. And we move on to item B. This is a special use permit. This is consider the adoption of SUP 2019-03, located at 1982 South Lincoln. And this would be a filling station. Mark, would you like to start us up?
Thank you. This is, the paperwork for this starts on page 96 of your agenda packet. This is, as mentioned, to facilitate the expansion of Mitchell's Deli to also incorporate a filling station. Deli is a use by right in the B5, and a filling station is a use that's allowed via the issuance of a special use permit. The Planning Commission held a public hearing and considered the matter at their May 21st meeting. The Planning Commission recommends to the Board of Trustees that they approve this permit. The site plan associated with it is scheduled, I believe, for the Planning Commission consideration at their June meeting, which will be next week. The general requirements that are to guide you when you're looking at special condition use applications are in your packet, along with the items specific to a filling station. They're also in your packet, along with some renderings, that's what I'll term them, of the development. And so at this point, it's for the board to consider through your review of your requirements against this use, and then take action on the permit.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, so let's take this up to our special use requirements.
We have to have
We
a
have a
motion.
motion.
We have the motion
First.
first, okay. Let's make the
Well, I
motion.
can do
Oh, okay. I'm going to make a motion that we move to adopt SUP 2019-03, located 1982 South Lincoln Road, for a filling station.
Support
Support.
that.
Okay, motion to support and discussion.
Now we gotta go over the special uses.
Now we have to go through the
two
special
different-
use.
All
Both
right,
of
yep,
them.
yep. Anybody interject before we get started?
Yeah.
This is the opportunity.
There's also the special use, and then there's also the filling station.
Yep.
There's 4 questions, issues for that,
Yep,
so.
yep, I see them. All right, so we'll start with number 1. The special use shall be designed, constructed, and operated, maintained in a manner harmonious with the character of the adjacent property and the surrounding area. I'm going to start with Tim Landon and work around the table.
I agree.
Yeah, so do I. It does, the words there, this harmonious with that immediately adjacent area.
It'll fit in.
Support,
Support.
that, yeah.
Ditto, it fits in with everything that else is in those various corners, so.
Agreed.
I think so. It'll be a nice addition to that corner, and the drawings of it, concept drawings, are very attractive. 2, the special use shall not change the essential character of the surrounding area. Mr. Landon?
I'm not aware that it has a negative impact on the surrounding area.
Same here.
It doesn't change the character of the area.
Doesn't change it, so.
Does not, also the applicant owns the surrounding area around it, which is a B5, so it certainly fits in there, doesn't change anything.
Agreed.
Again, I think the design of the building and everything that they're doing there is very attractive. The special use shall not interfere with the general enjoyment of the adjacent property. Mr. Landon?
I don't believe it will. It may even add to the enjoyment. Who knows?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yes,
Yes.
it's okay.
I'm looking forward to the enjoyment.
It'll fit.
Yeah,
Mr. Rowley?
it does not distract from the
Yep.
adjacent areas of enjoyment. Again, it's congruent with everything that's in that neck of the woods there.
Okay.
Agreed.
Okay, I agree with that. The special use shall not be hazardous to adjacent property or involve uses, activities, materials, or equipment that will be detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of persons or property through the excessive production of traffic, noise, smoke, odor, fumes, or glare. Mr. Landon?
I would suspect that all the rules and regulations proposed onto an operation like this by the state would assure that to be true.
It's a high-traffic area now as it is, so I would agree with what Mr. Landon said.
I agree with Tim.
I as well.
Again, this is going to be a filling station, which means it's for the sale of gas, oil, and accessories. It is not going to be for service to the vehicles or a lubricating shop, that type of thing. So again, there are regulations by the state on everything that goes in there, and the applicant will follow that, so yeah, it's fine.
Agreed.
Okay. And I concur, filling station, but also what they're doing on the inside of it with the addition of, the deli and
Yeah.
all that sort of thing. I think it's a nice little addition to that corner. Let's see, the special use shall be adequately served by essential public facilities and services, or it shall be demonstrated that the person responsible for the proposed special use shall be able to continually provide adequate services and facilities deemed essential to the special use. Under consideration, the said facilities or services shall be approved by the Central Michigan District Health Department.
I expect that to be true and would concur.
Same here.
Those facilities and services already exist there.
I agree. It'll work.
Yep, they're all existing currently.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. When deemed necessary by the Township Board or Planning Commission, the use shall be adequately screened by distance and landscaping to protect the rights of all adjoining property. Mr. Lannon?
Yeah, hopefully that is understood by the developer and monitored by the township.
Yes, planning commission's there.
The drawings look pretty good here. Looks beautiful.
Yep, it looks great in the drawings, so it'll be good.
Also remember that this special use will go back to the PC, and there's a condition attached that they have to review a site plan. So I'm assuming that in that site plan, these issues will be addressed. Also, I want to concur with Ben. The pictures that have been presented are really nice. What I've seen out there thus far has been, a really nice development there with the landscaping, the way the buildings are put up, et cetera. So I'm assuming that this is just going to add to the whole structure out there.
Agreed.
Great. All right. I agree. We got a planning commission, and this is why they're here. All right.
7.
Let's see. The Township Board or Planning Commission, in connection with approval of any application, may require reasonable undertaking by the applicant to guarantee and assure by agreement, including a performance bond, to be posted by the applicant or by some other reasonable surety arrangement at appropriate stages of the plan development, that the development will be executed in accordance with the approved plan. Mr. Lannon.
I believe that to be true and would be followed.
Mr. Mikas.
Right, that is our so stated policy.
Mr. Hauk.
I agree with it.
Ms. Rice.
I agree with it.
Mr. Worley.
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Cody.
Yep.
You jumped in before I called.
Yep.
You jumped over.
Yeah, wait your turn.
You jumped over my yes.
I would
I
say
already went
yes on
through these,
that.
I'm sorry. Apologize.
That such use will be an asset to the township. Mr. Lannon.
Yes, I believe so.
Mr.
Looks
Mikas.
like a lot of employment opportunity for a variety of people.
Mr. Hauk.
I agree, it's gonna. I've heard nothing but good things from people coming into town from that side of the state even, that have said it looks beautiful over there. So it's definitely gonna be an asset.
Ms. Rice.
I think it'll definitely be an asset.
Yeah, I think what we envisioned for that corner to be is beginning to take place. We're seeing increased business growth. We have, there's commercial development going on. It's a destination site for folks. And now with the gas station, the deli, the eateries, I mean, it's really starting to pick up. And they're also looking into consumer and retail stores there as well. So it's really taken on the vision that we had hoped for. So I'm pleased with it. So yes, I think it would be a real asset.
Ms. Cody.
I think so too. Putting a gas station on that side of the road, not having to cross traffic.
I think also we have to look at an important, I'm being on the DDA, the West DDA will have more ability to improve infrastructure in that segment, which will lead to even more. So I say very vehemently yes. Number 9, requirements and conditions of each individual special use permitted shall be complied with unless otherwise mentioned within this section. Mr. Lannon.
I certainly hope so.
Mr. Mikas.
Right, we have the planning commission and staff to see the project.
Mr. Hauk.
I believe they will comply.
Ms. Rice.
I believe they'll comply.
Mr. Hauk. Mr. Worley.
I expect it will be done. I expect it will be complied to.
Okay. Ms. Cody.
Agreed.
Great. Okay, I'd say yes. That's why we have staff. That's why we have a building department. We'll obviously have the county will be helping monitor that too. Let's see, item 10. Any special use permit may be revoked by the Union Township Board upon recommendation of the Union Township Planning Commission whenever the operation fails to comply with any of the required conditions or may be subject to the penalties of this ordinance. A, approval of a special use permit shall be valid regardless of change of ownership, provided that all terms and conditions of the permit are met by any subsequent owner. B, in instances where development authorized by special use permit has not commenced within 1 year from the date of issuance, the permit may be reconsidered and or voided at a regularly called meeting of the Planning Commission. And we'll do as a formality, obviously. With this one, there's really not much of an answer on this, but yes. Mr. Lannon.
I believe that is a correct articulation of the ordinance as it stands?
Ditto.
I believe the conditions will be met.
Yes.
I think our ordinances and our enforcement will provide the oversight that's necessary, and I believe the applicant will adhere to it, so I say yes.
Yes.
And I would say yes also. All right, special conditions on filling stations. Filling stations for the sale of gasoline, oil, minor accessories, and other incidental service provided. 1, they are only located in Ag, B4, B5, B6, or B7 districts. This is located obviously in a B5. So 2, the curb cuts for access to a filling station shall not be permitted at such locations that will tend to create traffic hazards in the streets immediately adjacent thereto. Entrances shall be no less than 25 feet from a street intersection, measured from the road right away or from adjacent residential districts. I believe in this they've discussed that they're not having any additional curb cuts. The curb cuts will be existing. So I think that's clearly as stated. I'm assuming that our Township Planning Commission will ensure that the other items are followed.
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes, sir.
Joe Quant, for the record, I represent the applicants. There was one mistake. The existing curb cuts are not going to exist. They're actually going to be farther away, so turning radiuses and protection of traffic safety will be greater enhanced. But when I first saw the site plan and developed the guidance document that I presented for you, it was my understanding that the curb cuts were going to remain. They're actually going to be spread farther apart with access further to the south off Lincoln and further to the west. Just so you're aware that it will go through site plan review by next Tuesday, but I just wanted to make sure there was no misunderstanding about it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Quant.
And again, the site plan is going to
Yep.
oversee that, and you know, the application has some say in that as well, so.
See, the minimum lot area be 15,000 square feet, and so arranged that ample space is available for motor vehicles that are required to wait. Filling stations, they're intended solely for the sale of gasoline, oil, and minor accessories, having no facilities for repair or servicing of automobiles, including lubricating facilities, may be permitted on lots meeting the minimum lot area requirements of the district they are located in. I believe this is actually going to be quite a bit larger than 15,000, I believe, though. And again, the Planning Commission will be handling that end of things. No principal or accessory building shall be closer than 50 feet from any abutting residentially zoned boundary line or in any event within 100 feet of any existing residential dwellings locating on abutting property. There really is any residential that's going to be abutting this property. Driveways and parking areas as specified in section 30.4.B.2. And that, again, will be handled by the Planning Commission. And I believe they're going to have substantial parking spots in this. 40, I think is what I read. 6, all lighting shall be shielded from adjacent districts. They've talked about they're going to be complying with our township lighting ordinance. So, yep, this will be a roll call vote. Any other questions or comments we make before we go to roll call?
Yeah, my only comment is the rendering is certainly appealing, but is placement accurate? I just don't imagine it laying out how it actually looks in these pictures. Does anyone know if this layout is accurate?
Right, my understanding is it's going to be south of the existing corner market. And if you imagine that, then you can see where this filling station will fit into what's now a empty lot.
Well, the way it's laid out with the existing building that's current and under construction, you know, that would be facing M20, where this.
More helpful for this is
Okay, yeah.
The front building's gonna be end up being
Right,
demolished
backwards.
as they go backwards,
That
so,
was explained to us before.
yeah, yeah.
So the new Mitchells will go, I guess, to the more to the south or to the southwest?
To the southwest, it's gonna go back,
Southwest.
kind of where the dirt pile, not as far back as that, but in that direction.
Okay.
And then the old building will be demolished.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
I mean, interpreting the rendering,
Yeah.
the drawing, just, I wasn't seeing it how I see it in reality.
No, that was a good question.
Thank
though.
you.
All right. Further discussion? All right, let's take this up for a roll call vote. Clerk Cody?
Supervisor Gunning,
Yes.
Treasurer Rice,
Yes.
Trustee Hauk,
Yes.
Trustee Micus,
Yes.
Trustee Lannan,
Yes.
Trustee Worley,
Yes.
Clerk Cody, yes.
All right. Special use passes on to the Planning Commission. Item C, this is to introduce ordinance 2019-04, an ordinance to amend various provisions of the Charter Township of Union Water Service Use and Rate Ordinance number 1987-9 as amended. Whose phone is that? Put it on silent if you could.
You'll find this paperwork on page 121 of your agenda packet. And just to kind of orientate you to to why this issue's in front of you, we had the Lux matter a while ago that involved a dispute regarding how additions of existing facilities are handled regarding water and sewer fees. While that matter was never adjudicated before a judge or a jury, a settlement was reached via accommodations by both parties. In the process, some clarification was acknowledged could occur with our ordinance so that the language more clearly reflects the intent of the ordinance. Ordinance 1987-9 as amended. It provides for the operation and maintenance of the entire water supply system. It establishes charges and rates for water service and use regulations, provides penalties for violations. The proposed amendments clarify language regarding hookup fees and system benefit fees, particularly regarding additions and expansions to facilities that are already hooked up to the system. The specific articles and sections that are being amended are Article 10, Roman numeral 10, Section 1A, dealing with hookup fees, and also Section 1B of the same article dealing with system benefit fees. In addition, we're recommending amending Section 1D as in David 1 as it relates to the language for consumption charges. There is no change being made to either variable or fixed rates, and no change in the level of fees per this ordinance. The ones that you approved with the budget amendment at the start of the fiscal year, that fee schedule remains intact. So there's nothing like that going on in this amendment. A red line version is provided for your benefit on page 128 to help you understand what's being amended. And again, this is primarily in the realm of clarifying when additions and expansions to facilities that are currently hooked up to the system, how those are going to be treated. Be happy to answer any questions you may have. If they're too technical in nature, I will ask the Public Services Director to come up and address the question.
Mark,
as
is
well.
Mark, has there been a study or evaluation of the effect of the changes in this ordinance would have on, let's say, like a sample consumer of the water, in a house with 4 people, for example, or a filling station at a corner. When it comes to the changes in the consumption charges that are noted to be changed on page 131 of our packet,
There are no changes being made to any of the fees. So whatever the dollar amount is yesterday, it's still the same today. It's whatever the charges were that were approved by you in the fee schedule at the beginning of the budget year. Financial impact on the system would be zero, neutral from our perspective, because we're not changing anything that we do. What we're doing is clarifying language so that it eliminates future disputes where folks disagree with what we're doing currently. Does that follow the ordinance? Our position has always been, of course, what we're doing is following the ordinance. And as you all identified as we were reviewing this matter, well, because we had a dispute, it doesn't make any sense to go back and look at our ordinance to clarify language to try to eliminate that confusion. We did not think there was confusion to begin with, but that's another matter.
Thank you for that answer, but just as a follow-up question, on page 131 of our packet, the section D, the consumption charges for water consumption, the effective January 1, 2019, the quarterly charge, as stated, is greater than the quarterly charge divided by 3 to equal a monthly charge is greater than the monthly charge that's in the current ordinance. For example, the consumption charge originally, as we have it now, will be a minimum of $12 per month. It's changed to $52 per quarter.
There's language in the ordinance that allows for board approval of rate changes, and that's been occurring for, I think, a number of years.
Okay.
And so there are amounts printed in the ordinance that do not comport with today's rate, with today's fee schedule. And that's allowed, the board's allowed by resolution to change these fees, and you review that every year.
I understand that now, thank you.
And
Mark.
there are some areas in the ordinance where we've eliminated the dollar amount altogether to make reference to this kind of thing in the
Thank you.
annual fee schedule.
I have a question. Where in here does it address late fees and shut-offs? Because one of the largest complaints that we've had since I've been on this board is late fees and shut-offs. I mean, where do we address any of that in here?
The only thing being addressed in this amendment are those things that primarily relate to additions and expansions of existing facilities. We did not do, by intention, an entire ordinance review and revision, if you will.
So if we have a commercial enterprise and we go to our chart in the 1990 dash whatever it is, our ordinance that has the REU factors in it, and then there's a multiplier based upon the presumed use of the water and sewer on that particular type of enterprise. Say it's a filling station, and they're assigned of a number of 6. And it looks to here that after 6 months on their water, then they would take their consumption divided by 6, and then that would be their charge for their water service, correct? Would be that average. I guess the question I would have is if they were charged for a 6 and it turns out that they were using a 3, what happens to the money that they overpaid? Do we reimburse that money, or do we credit it to their account, or how does that work?
We do neither of those things, and I think what you're referring to maybe is, on the water side, there's the table drives the initial billings.
Yeah,
And then I think after 6 months or a year, there's a review, and then it's reset based on
I
more
think it was a
current-
year, but it looks like in this it's 6 months.
I don't know that we're changing that duration. I don't think we are.
'Cause I thought I saw something about 6 months in this one. And I
But-
thought it was a year before.
We're not changing the period that's being looked at for the look-back provision.
But what do we do with, so
And we
they're
don't give
being
the
over-
money back.
We don't?
No, never have.
Okay. Well, I kind of think that's a little unfair, being a commercial enterprise. I would think that's a little, I mean,
That might be something you want to address
Yeah.
in a full ordinance revision, but the direction from the board, the imperative was to get the changes made to the presumed confusion on
With the process.
additions and add-ons, expansions.
This is addressing more the process of how the billing is occurring. We might want to look at some point more at the content, the specificity of this fee schedule, shut-offs, turn-ons, what that all implies. So we can look at the content, but this is to do more with the process where we got stuck in terms of the misunderstanding of how the ordinance was being applied to the consumer. So,
Should I make a motion before
Oh, yeah.
discussion? You want me to?
We don't have a motion yet.
No.
We don't have
a
motion.
motion.
no.
All right. What do I approve it? Make a motion to approve the ordinance number 2019-04.
And this is an introduction and first reading. It'll be published, I believe, in the newspaper, and then brought back for final approval at your next meeting.
So I would second the motion to introduce the ordinance that we're discussing today.
okay, we do have a motion and a second. Do we have any further
Question.
discussion on this?
Go ahead, along the lines of discussion or question, so then we'll have a public hearing scheduled as well.
A public hearing is not required for this.
Okay.
We weren't planning on one.
But it does get published for the public to see.
It'll be published in these amendments in its entirety.
All right.
For
Well, this
whatever
makes a
those
lot of
rules
sense
are.
to me, we're always talking about how old our ordinances are, especially when we come up against something that makes us open the book and review an ordinance, and we can improve on it. That's been one of our hopes as part of the mission as board members here, is to review and update our ordinances, so I'm happy that we're moving down what we as a board have decided we want to do.
I think it provides more clarity as opposed to what existed, and that was the purpose of why we were requesting this to be done, because there was confusion that came out previously. But again, going back to what I said, what I just said before, is that we can review the rates or the fees and things like that. I think that might be something at a later date, but that'd be more the content. This is more the process of how it gets applied.
We do that in our annual budget.
Correct. We
have
do
our
that anyway,
rate
yes.
schedule, and this month begins that process, so.
Correct.
Real timely.
Yes.
All right, that answers my question. That's-
Yeah, there's a process for that too.
I mean, we need to do something about hookup rates, initial hookup
Yeah.
rates. I mean, I've got a picture of a blueprint here that, well, it's not worth getting into until we talk about rates.
Any further discussion on this?
No.
How are we doing this? We doing roll call or are we doing voice?
Let's just do roll call. Supervisor Gunning?
No, and I'm going to interject that I think this is not fixing anything, it's just making it less fair. I'm going to say adamantly no.
Treasurer Rice?
Yes.
Trustee Hauk?
No.
Trustee Micus?
Yes.
Trustee Lannan?
Yes.
Trustee Worley?
Yes.
Clerk Cody, yes.
Okay, motion carries. We move to our next one, which is going to be to introduce ordinance 2019-05, an ordinance to amend various provisions of the Charter of Township Union Sewer Rate and Mandatory Connection Ordinance numbers 1979-4 as amended. Mark, you want to lead this one in?
Yes, and for the same reason mentioned earlier, this amendment as it applies to the sewer ordinance. The other one was to the water, and again is to clarify language regarding the sewer connections, charges paid at the time of connection, and then particularly with, as it relates to additions and expansions to facilities that are already connected to the system. Section 7, paragraph A is what's being amended here. Again, there's a red line version on page 138 that you can see how the existing and the new look together. And as was the case earlier, there is no change in any of the dollar rates or fees, variable or fixed, from those that were approved in the fee schedule as part of the 2019 budget adoption.
All right, we open that up to discussion, or do we have a motion?
Well, I'll move that we introduce ordinance number 2019-5, the ordinance to amend various provisions of our township sewer rate and mandatory connection ordinance, number 1979-4, as amended.
Support.
Okay, we open that up to discussion.
Again, I think we're bringing an ordinance that needed clarification up to our current date.
Yeah, I'm grateful for the opportunity that we've had to, have our eyes open to the language, old language, and the realization that we need to clarify and have new language to make this a better ordinance.
So my question is going to be this, is that once we assign somebody an REU, we know that sewer and water are 1-to-1 ratio. So when we assign an item, a usage of 6 in the water, after a period of time, we look at the usage, we adjust the rate accordingly. The sewer, I don't see any language where that gets adjusted. Does it stay at the original REU, or does it get adjusted with the water?
There is not a look back for the sewer as it relates, as there is with the water.
Okay. I'm done. Anybody else?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Supervisor Gunning?
No, this is not fair. We need to make the system fair. I'm not going to vote for this.
Treasurer Rice?
Yes.
Trustee Hauk?
I'm gonna say no for now until we get our rates adjusted.
Trustee Micus?
I vote yes.
Trustee Lannan?
Yes.
Trustee Worley?
Yes.
Clerk Cody, yes.
Motion passes. We go to item E. This is going to be consider amending governance policy 2.7 to require board approval of Saginaw Chippewa Tribe 2% grant applications prior to submittal, and amending policy 3.4 to ensure formal board input for what is being applied for under the 2% program.
I'd make a motion to amend governance policy 2.7 to require board approval of the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe 2% grant applications
Second.
prior to submittal, and amending policy 3.4 to ensure formal board input on what is being applied for under the 2% grant program.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion?
Yeah, I support this wholeheartedly. We've have had discussions in the past about have we gotten grants in, what are the grants, who's deciding on what. But it also goes right along with the board's obligation under policy governance to continually monitor the various portions of the policy and to change language as needed to make it more pertinent and current.
Further discussion?
Yeah. The problem I'm having with it is the formality of what we're doing. In terms of, we spoke the last time, a while back, when we put in our last request regarding, making sure it was done in ample time, that there was more feedback from the board, that we're all on page with what was being applied for, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. Where I'm a little bit stuck, knowing the process of how this is, how the 2% is done. Case in point was, let's go back to when we first started, again, applying for the 2%, would be the Meridian Road project that was being pushed at that point by you, Ben. Not that it was a bad idea, because the road definitely needs to be serviced. But again, it wasn't approved, so we got nothing in that particular distribution because, again, it didn't. The feedback I got was it was use and access. It's not that frequently used, and access to tribal lands. So because of that, we got denied that particular request. Subsequent requests that we applied for included the Isabella Road traffic flow and safety features on Isabella, the ball fields last term in the spring, and now for the pathway conductor over at CMU. All those have been approved. And we've done that in kind of an informal manner. We've had discussions about what we'd like to do, et cetera. What I just want to help you understand is that sometimes we'll have a discussion on something. This is a collaborative effort. It's coordinated with other folks. So I may then talk to people at the tribe about, the feasibility of this, the use and access. Is this something that looks like it can be supported for this particular grant period? So you get a feel of what's going to fly and what isn't in terms of acceptability or for getting the grant. So I agree with everything in terms of that we do this in advance, that we have board input, that you throw out ideas, like the next issue on here is going to be talking about ideas. I will take those ideas and begin to talk to others out at the tribe regarding those ideas to see which ones are most feasible, which ones are the ones that they're most interested in as well. They like when you collaborate with other municipalities, so something like Mount Pleasant or the Road Commission or whatever. So I agree with everything in here, but I don't think it should be like the formal vote. I'm just afraid that we like maybe tonight or maybe next week we say, okay, well, we're going to put in a request for such and such of a project. Then I find out that project isn't even going to be considered or is not one that's going to be of interest to them to support. Well, now we've made a decision on it. So then you have to come back and do we reverse our decision and say, well, these are the things that look better. I usually have a sense of what is going to have a chance of being approved by discussion. So this makes it a little bit too formal for me. So I'm going to vote against it, not because I don't want everyone's input, that we should do this in advance. All the things that we've discussed, I agree with wholeheartedly. I think when we get down to, we make that a final vote. Well, when we make that a final vote, well, then that's what we're going to submit. And then we ride on that, and we may not end up getting what we want. I think it has to be more collaborative. So that's my opinion on it. So I'm going to vote against it because of the formality of it, not because of the input and the boards all having, and doing this more in advance.
Well, I mean, we'd be probably throwing out a blanket of projects, and I'm assuming that you being involved in the conversation would be. So I understand what you're saying. I guess we got to be careful about looking short-term instead of long-term on this, I guess.
I mean, if you make it too specific, like the Meridian Road, for example, then you go, and that was what I had to work with. Well, I knew that wasn't going to pass. Because I was,
I don't think we had anything else that one. That was like the only one we had.
And I'm not putting it down, and I'm not saying it wasn't a good idea. I go down that road, and it needs to be done, but maybe a different way, But I just, and you may, if we vote on things, we may have maybe 6 or 7, 5, 6, 7 different projects that you're considering, then I have something to work with. But if you narrow it down to 1 and 2, and those things aren't going to fly, well, then you sit with the result. So that's the thing. That's the only thing I have against it, and because I know how the process, how the process works. So I would go with this without the formality of the voting, or that there's some options that are being presented in the vote that are more than just 1 or 2, like I said.
Good explanation.
I don't really see it like that. I see we need to have pretty succinct,
Yeah.
formal
To vote
policies in our policy governance manual. What Norm explains to me sounds a bit like a failure to be proactive and ahead of the curve with conversations. That to me sounds a little bit like, and there are circumstances where things happen maybe at the 13th hour, but I don't see that as the norm, so I would not want to make what I'll term as a loosey-goose or less than structured policy to accommodate something that I foresee as being rare and maybe allowing us not to be prepared and proactive as we should.
But it
So I
hasn't,
certainly would
been
support this.
It hasn't been that way. I mean, I feel that we've had these discussions about what we want to do, and it gets presented. But I think there's a process that's in place and how you go about doing it. So I'm just saying that I like to ensure the most likely success of getting things done in the most collaborative and cooperative manner. So
I don't see where we're having to vote on it.
Yeah. Well, I think that not
I
when
don't think there's anything in language that says we're voting anything.
not in the language in here,
Yeah.
but I think that the way
Just changing the red since added.
Yeah.
Talking about
Yeah.
amending
Yeah.
our current
I got
policy.
you. Yeah.
You're just talking, this looks just like we're just saying that we need to have board input before.
Without prior approval. Okay.
I don't see anything
Yeah, it's
about
not saying
voting.
voting on it.
Okay.
So it's just
I mean, that's
basically,
what
it's
I
just
think from it.
communication, it looks like to me,
Can I add some
collaboration.
clarity to
Like
the
what we've been
discussion?
doing.
Yes, sir.
Because
Go
it
ahead.
does require a vote. There's 2 things going on here. One is amending, and I won't take them in numerical order because I think that'll help. Amending policy 3.4.3, which discusses how the board will take up agenda items. So we're adding a new section there that in the months of June and January, there will be an agenda item, just like there is tonight, for the board to have some discussion amongst yourselves about what you might want to think about applying for the 2% grant program. And in this case, the discussion in June would be for the October, there'll be a September 30th deadline for the fall program. So you begin your discussion, and then you are going to be moving into budget development, and there might be needs where you need to feel like you need to throw some money into the game, as part of the grant application, so you can be, beginning those discussions as well. And then, so that's what 3.4.3.1 addition requires, a simple discussion. And I thought I had heard that loud and clear
Yes.
over the last several grant application cycles. And then we're also amending 2.7. We're adding 2.7.1, and that's in the limitations section of the policy. And that section expresses with negative verbiage what the manager is not to allow to happen. So it's, the wording you'll see is, the
The
township
opposite.
manager will not allow, and, there's a whole slew of them. And so in this recommendation, which again I thought we heard from the board, was that a grant application would not be submitted to the board without approval by the township. And I see that happening in a practical manner, probably the first meeting in September and the first meeting in March for the 2 cycles. And that's what's going on here. So there will be a vote in the March and June time frames, right prior to the applications being submitted.
March and September, March and August. It would be March and June.
The deadline is March 30th, so it'd be it'd be the first meeting in March, I would imagine, and the deadline September 30th, so the first meeting in September. And otherwise, I won't be submitting an application, that has not had a vote by the board saying, yes, go ahead and submit the application. It feels to me like there's plenty of time to accommodate the needs of the board, opportunities to, if there needs to be matches made, and it limits my ability to just apply for whatever I think is best without getting the input from the board and by extension the input from the community. That's why you asked us to do this.
And we'd listen to you, Norm. We'd listen to you. We'd listen to you in the discussion.
What helps me, what you just said, Mark, was the fact that we would do this ahead of time, so that gives me time to, if it's not going to fly, you can come back to the board and say, hey, this doesn't look like it's going to go. These 2 look good, and we can decide how we want to package it prior to Mark doing it. That I can live with. I mean, if that, the way it's here, that I can definitely live with. So I think we just have the flexibility with it because of the way it's done.
All right.
Ben?
Yes, sir.
I like these 2 proposed changes. I'll be voting in favor of them. I like them because it does formalize this some forward thinking. Let's talk about what we want to, our laundry list of things to consider. Has the board involved in it, gives Norm time to run it up a flagpole, get some feedback from all parties. Collaboration continues. I also like these changes because it's a result from what we wanted to have done in our policy governance. We sit at times and say, I'd like to have this stuff done. Well, the way we work is things get done if it's in our governance policy. So we're reacting to the needs that we've identified. And I think this is a great step. We rarely take these great steps in improving our policy governance so that it reflects and really includes what we as a board want to have in the policy governance. So that's why I'm in favor of it tonight.
Further discussion, folks?
No, I definitely see it less stifling now that it's been explained. And I think as long as we have the time to check it out, I think, because I'm not thinking just of me, but the next, whoever else might be doing this down the road, that there's that ability to do that, so.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, let's take this up for vote. This will be the, as an action item to, let's see, amending governance policy 2.7 to require board approval of Saginaw Chippewa and Tribe 2% grant applications prior to submittal, and amending policy 3.4 to ensure formal board input on what is being applied for under the 2% grant program. All in favor of this, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? And we have our changes to our governance policy. We're going to bring this to item F, and I'm assuming this is just a discussion item as opposed to a discussion action. And this would be to openly discuss items to be applied for under the October 2019 2% grant program. Who would like to lead our discussion? Norm, would you like to lead our discussion?
All right, I'll start off with a few. We talked about one earlier about Crawford Road, widening and improving the shoulders, maybe reducing the mileage, the speed limit. you know, potentially you could have 5 entities involved. I mean, from the Road Commission, MDOT, CMU, Mount Pleasant, and us, and the 2%. I mean, so you have a whole combination of availability there. I do think that has some urgency to it because of what has happened. You're right about the pathway going through from Deerfield that will eventually go to Part A to the Part B, but we have that flow of all the apartment buildings on Deerfield that will now go through campus. But you still see a good amount of people either jogging, riding bikes, walking along the street. You're still going to get people going out to the main and walking up to those apartments. So I think that's one project I would definitely like to see. The other, Phil, you made mention to it, would be Harris and on Crawford Road, getting a sidewalk, pathway, whatever, going from Pickard all the way up to River. We have, if you look at that going down, you know, we have the subdivision there, and then you have the dog park. Then there's another kind of vacant. There's a park there too. Then going down to the Coyne property, and we have that long stretch now that he's given us right of way to. Plus, with everything going on now over at the other side with the boarding school, looking to make that perhaps a national historic site. And I think that this would be a really nice collaborative effort. I think if maybe we can get Mount Pleasant involved in this, ourselves and the tribe. And there was a lot of discussion about getting that there. I think it's perfect timing for it. So I'd like to see that one. The other one was there's to connect O'Connor and McDonald subdivisions. There's a kind of a pathway that goes through those subdivisions, and I was getting a lot of feedback for, you know, if we could have some type of a connector there as well. I do think that would be supported in terms of use and access, because you have tribal members living in both the subdivisions there as well. That would be for 2%. The others would be, I don't know if Area A, Deerfield to Denison, would be something that we could be doing with the travel monies. I'm not sure how that would work with that one. And the last one I had was, Bill had mentioned this previously too, with McDonald, having a sidewalk through this area here, friend of town, into the McDonald Park. That might be a nice collaborative effort too that we could look into. Going back to the Meridian Road, I think Meridian Road might be something we're going to do in collaboration with Deerfield Township and get that taken care of, because it's like going through a landmine there. That's another thing. A couple more things. In my discussions when I was out at the for the distribution grants, I spoke with folks from the Renaissance. They would like to see both people at Renaissance and people at Mary McGuire were talking about the possibility of, you know, getting the lights on Broadway where we're missing that section. That would complete the whole thing going from Bluegrass all the way then down to M20. So that's an area that they were requesting. They said there's a lot of backup when it comes to the end of the school day. They also wanted to know if there's any possibility, and this I guess would go through, MDOT or through state police, of maybe having safety lights both at McGuire and at Renaissance, to have some type of maybe like a blinking, you know, have a light that goes, blinking light at 3 o'clock when school gets out, because there's people coming out of that parking lot, they're trying to get onto Broadway, and right now there's a bottleneck there, and I think it's another accident waiting to happen. So those are just some things I'm throwing out as things that I just thought might be some possibilities that we might want to consider. And this can be 2%, and this can be us collaborating with other townships, or with Mount Pleasant, or even looking at with MDOT or with the Road Commission.
I was going to interject on the Broadway. I know that the Road Commission was waiting on MDOT to do the improvements on Pickard.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that in congruency with that was finishing that. That's why that was left out of that whole thing.
Right.
So I just got notification from MDOT that I'm gonna be going to the planning meeting on, was it July 1st, where they're gonna be redoing from the expressway all the way to Mission Street, then from Pickard north all the way to River Road.
Mhm.
Is gonna be all completely redone. So I think that's kind of already in the,
Yeah,
so that
perfect.
2% actually might
Yes.
be a good one to
Mhm.
go with.
Mhm.
All right. Tim, would you like to jump into the fray?
Oh, not too deeply, but, you know, speaking of collaborative efforts, if that is a benefit of 2% money and such. And I'm not overly familiar with it, but we have Indian Parks, which is in the township, a city park, and an interesting name for the
Is that
city.
Indian Woods?
Indian Pines, I believe, which is off of Valley Road. We've had some dealings with that in the past. It was maybe utilized in a fashion that wasn't park-like. There's been some cleanups. An area that maybe I would consider on a list to look at needs and possibilities.
Lisa?
A lot of mine were norms, but them were my goals for the, our goal meeting. But, yeah, I'd like to see a lot of, look into those.
Let's bounce it over the other side to Phil.
Now, here's one to add to the list, not for the October program, but the January opportunity. That would be a collaborative effort with the development of recycling drop-off station at our property at the corner of Deerfield and Mission Road. We've kind of, not so much this board, but previous board kicked some of the idea around, developed a preliminary site plan. Something that's changed is that the state of Michigan has a pot of money available, grants for recycling infrastructure projects come up in May of 2020, and that's through the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. And so I would say that such a project could really benefit the community, particularly when it would be an environmental project with the collaborative effort of the township, the tribe, and the state of Michigan. My second comment is I see a lot of items, and I would sure hope that we're not going to try to boil that down to make a decision tonight on October requests. So that's the end of my comment.
Bill?
I like the one that Norm said, and that's one I was gonna bring up, between Remus Road and Broadway. I mean, you go down Isabella Road at 7:45 in the morning, and there's so many cars turning left into Renaissance Academy. I mean, I don't know how there aren't more accidents. They're gonna add on to that school starting soon here too. So there are gonna be more cars in here.
We also had, at that same meeting, it was not only the Renaissance folks that were mentioning it, but actually had two members on the tribal council mention it to me as well, as wanting to see that being done.
Isn't that
on
getting left turn
Broadway.
lanes, you guys?
Pardon?
Isn't that getting left turn lanes this summer?
Where?
In front of Renaissance, from the corner back, it's getting left turn lanes.
In the corner?
At Remus
That's
Road
what I thought
and
was, yeah.
Isabella.
Oh,
Yeah.
you mean by Remus?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So that should help a little bit, I
Yeah,
think,
that will help
right?
that, but the other part is the Broadway.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
future, yeah.
Yeah.
That left-hand turn lane's gonna go all the way from Renaissance to Isabella, or not Isabella?
I thought it was,
I don't
if
think
I remember
so.
correctly, I thought that was the part of the discussion. Wasn't that
I-
left turn going,
I
helping
thought
out the Renaissance back up too?
I thought we were gonna have the left going all of the three intersections, the Bluegrass, Broomfield, and Remus. It was my understanding that we were doing lefts on all of them.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
But it's not gonna extend back to,
The
that's not
high
gonna
school.
extend
or-
back to Renaissance. I mean, that's a long way for a
Correct.
left-hand turn.
Yeah.
See what I mean? There's so many items to discuss. and
Yes.
So many
Mhm.
background pieces of
Yeah.
information we
Mhm.
don't have in front of us today.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good way to just start throwing some spitballs against the wall and see what sticks, right? So we get some ideas. So, Kim.
My big one was Crawford Road. I mean, I've been a thorn in Bill's side, sorry.
Well, no,
I've heard from so many people. I mean, I live over there, so you know, it's there's so many kids and families that have moved into the area, and they're wanting to go walk down Denison and everything, but they're like, we will not take our kids on the road. So if they want to go biking anywhere, if they want to go walking anywhere, they have to load up their vehicles with all the bikes. And I mean, some of these have 4 or 5 kids, and you can't fit all that on a vehicle to get all the bikes over there. And that, because they're like, we will not drive down or, ride our bikes down that road because it's so bad. So, I mean, that's a biggie for me. So, also one of my goals.
I'm going to throw out our park system. I know that the EDA had also, Tom Keeklum had written a letter on a 2% for Jameson Park. And I think that, maybe looking at that area of our township and maybe looking at if there's some property that we can acquire. I don't know if that's an empty lot still out in front. I know that was bandied about, I believe, at one point in time in the past with the previous management, was the possibility of purchasing some of that property and expanding that park. It kind of gets lost back where it's at. It's like the forgotten little soul out there. But I think that, with some more visibility, I think it would be, useful. And, I think that that's an important issue with everyone, is looking for recreational opportunities for our children. So I think that would be one thing that maybe would be something that we could discuss and look into. I know the EDA is very, adamant or is like that project. One other thing I'm just going to throw out, and this is a wild stab, it kind of piggybacks a little bit on what Phil was talking about in sustainability. And that is going to be something I think is the future, is commercial composting. And, I think that as we start to move away from single-use plastics, we're seeing more and more, and I know in my facility, everything I sell is compostable and biodegradable, but you need to have that missing intangible of having commercial composting. And, I think as we move forward, instead of throwing stuff in the ground, we should start having infrastructure in place that handles waste and makes it reusable. And so I think that, something to discuss might be, along with maybe recycling, is the concept of commercial composting and industrial composting. And we already have a nice facility on the one end of town, and it's in our township, and I don't think we should ignore that.
If I might add, there is a composting facility over in, I want to say Sears, if that's not the right.
Yeah, it's M66,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, right. So just
Yeah.
something to think about as we
Mm.
go forward. Just
Yeah.
as there isn't a landfill in everybody's backyard, it's probably good that we wouldn't want to have industrial composting facility in everyone's backyard, but since there's one existing, in a transferable location, maybe a transfer type
Yeah.
station idea might
Yeah, yeah.
satisfy your vision.
Yeah, because that's, I think that, isn't it, they do the dairy do there, don't they?
They make dairy do there, that's right.
Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah. All right, any further discussion on this? All right, so moving out of that, we move to, I'm thinking a very popular item in today's agenda is going to be item 11. And this is extended public comment, and this is going to be restricted to 5 minutes, and this is regarding any issue that you would like to discuss. Questions to the board will not be answered at this time, and if someone would like to come up and speak their mind, they're more than willing to. Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you. Joe Quant, 412 South Main in Traverse City. Something I would encourage you to look at carefully as you consider the water and sewer ordinance changes is the fact that you have no provision that allows for a retroactive reset of your sewer charges. You know, I get the fact that when you first connect to the system, you kind of guess at what the potential REU consumption is going to be. And you do have a resetting provision that says, okay, you know, we assume that you're going to consume 6 and you only consume 1. With your sewer rate, you have no ability to do that. And number one, it's inherently unfair, basically, to be paying for 8 REUs of sewer use when you're only paying 1 REU of water use. And I think that the generally accepted assumption in utility parlance is that you pay for the same amount of sewer as you do for water, because the water that's coming out of the tap is going down the drain. Number 2 is there's also an inherent legal exposure. As you're probably aware, one of the features that you're always concerned about is under the Headley constitutional amendment is that utility charges have to reasonably be approximate to the service that's provided. Now, there are some other ancillary services that support utility objectives that can be part of that rate. The one thing that the courts have been absolutely clear on is the fact that you cannot charge a rate that is grossly disproportional to the actual service that's being provided. And if you've got somebody who's being charged for 8 and you know that they're only using 1 and there's no opportunity to reset that, there is some potential exposure to that. So just for what it's worth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim McLean, Township resident, president of the Union Township Little Big League. 3 different things. I want to thank Norm for the defibrillators. I think that was something we all needed in the township, and it not only went from just doing it at the parks, but everybody got one. I think that's good. That's a good deal. The other thing was last week we had an issue that happened in the park. I did email everybody on this. When we repainted some things, we went with maroon with gold trim. The gold trim isn't up yet, but it started a fireworks, so to speak, that I didn't think needed to happen. But in a conversation with Kim, which got a little heated on both sides, and I think that could have been handled a little better. But I did make a mistake on something that I emailed everybody about, that we were going to paint it green afterwards. I had totally forgotten about that. That was all on me. And I apologize to Kim for that. But again, I think the phone call could have been handled a little different, and we could have resolved that issue. The next day, Mark and I sat down and we did resolve it. I've been involved with these parks for over 35 years, and I take great pride in McDonald and Jameson. I put a lot of time in out here. I don't get paid anything for it, although one time I was the park supervisor for a few years, and I enjoyed that tremendously. I got let go one year for reasons I'll never understand. But I'm going to rock the boat, and I'm sorry to do this. I'm not the kind of person that openly will do this, but we need a change in the parks. Problems have arisen that things are not getting done. Examples are, this spring the bathrooms didn't get open until almost the 3rd week. We didn't get an employee in the park till almost the 3rd week. Weather, there was some bad weather, but not that bad that would have not had a park employee there. Trash cans weren't put out. People were enjoying the parks on the nice days, but had to leave because they couldn't use the bathrooms. I'd go around at night and pick up trash because, as I said before, I love the parks. I love this park. And it bothers me that I don't think it's being taken after that, like it used to be. We put in some requests over a year ago. We haven't heard anything back. One was for an existing drain that needed to be fixed. We had a local contractor that was going to help us out with this and only charge for materials, and I'm still waiting to hear on that. 2 years ago, I had a contractor that was going to come in for $500, and the Little League and the Softball League was going to pay for it. I have the west side bulldozed down a little bit for extra parking. Fishers was going to come in and put gravel down. We were told we couldn't do that. Never heard anything more on it. The west side wooded area, I started getting it cleaned up years ago, and when I got let go, then it was left for nothing. It'd make a great picnic area, a nice pathway through there. We need the extra parking on the west side. It's become a dumping ground again. We had picked up everything over there, a lot of the concrete and steel that was over there over the years. Got that taken care of. We used to have 6 or 8 employees out here. Of course, they had expanded duties and everything, but now we need 3 in the spring. 3 full-time to get things started. After that, after things get started, it settles down. It's a lot better. We have 3 right now, but 1 is taken away if he's needed at utilities. And case in point was Monday when we got some rain in the morning. Nobody was out here at the parks. The softball fields and Geiger Field could have been gotten ready, but I came out and got Geiger ready and chalked everything that needed to be chalked. But it's things like that that it just bothered a lot of us over the last few years. I know Kim was appointed Parks Director several years ago. I think it was by Brian Smith. But I never could understand that. And don't get me wrong, Kim, I enjoy you, talking with you and everything and having meetings, but you don't have any background, you don't have any knowledge of parks. You've got too many responsibilities as it is.
I don't care.
Time up.
Your time's up. You continue.
And we need a change in the leadership of the parks because it's going the wrong way. There's a lot more I could get off my chest, but I don't want to keep you all here. It's been a long meeting. We need somebody in there that sees the parks in a different way and works for the needs of the parks through a budget to make all the improvements. So right now, if anybody needs anything more from me later, email me. I'll get back with you. But we need a change. Something needs to work out here at the parks. And I'm not politicking to do this. I have no desire to do it anymore. I like volunteering and being out here, but I don't want to run the parks. Not anymore. I'm getting old enough that I want time to, my wife and I, to travel. We haven't in the last 35 years been able to do anything in the summer.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Public comment still open?
I wasn't gonna say anything, but I guess I will. My name is Kay Bout. I go back to Bob Sullivan era, which if anybody's around here, you know that's even a little bit longer than Jim has been around. I work with, we have a unique situation where our program works with the city and with the township. And it's worked well for many, many years. But I think it's time to take a good look at what's called the Sports Authority and get our 2 entities together as far as our Parks and Recreation goes. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Kay.
Well, just a couple things. During the 2% tribal grant, when we were at Shepherd, we wrote grants, it went to a committee, they talked about it, came up with a 5 or 6 that they would submit. So keep that, the public should have an avenue to go with that, to bring it to the board to see if there's something they might have that the board might miss. As far as sidewalks and things like that, I know you have an ordinance that when somebody's building something, you put in sidewalks. Are we putting in sidewalks before they do something? The city's gonna take the tribal land that they have, they're gonna make that into subdivision, and then the tribe will also have the school. Are we trying to put in sidewalks that they're gonna have to put in anyway sooner or later? Number two, I'm glad to see you're going over the ordinance, and I would encourage the board to also go over their responsibilities and look at your, well, we call them bylaws at our church. When I had, was I director of congregation, we had boards that were doing somebody else's boards and so on. So look at your responsibilities, look at your job descriptions and follow those. That's what they're there for. Thank you.
Thank you. And would anyone else like to come forward? All right. Seeing none, we close public comment. We move to item 12, which would be manager comments. Mark?
Yeah, just a couple. Just wanted to mention, it already has been tonight, that the AEDs were installed at all the facilities. The cleanup day was quite a success, and thanks to all those that participated. And then I am, the comments, and I'm going to address them too, I'll rock the boat. The comments a few minutes ago, I think got a little personal, demeaning to the staff here, and I was a little disappointed that none of the board stood up and said anything, so I wanted to mention that. I met with Jim the day after, as he indicated. I reviewed budgets with him. We talked about park maintenance versus park programming, and actually went over quite a few things. He did indicate and gave me some history on how he used to work here on all that, and thought we had a pretty good conversation. But I did want to at least mention that I know I would appreciate it if the board would not allow public comment to devolve into demeaning staff. Thank you.
Final board comment. Norm, I'll let you start.
Okay, well, I'm going to probably piggyback off of some of what Mark has said, and it's always hard, doing this. But I think we as a board have been pretty stressed in the last couple weeks. We've just been inundated with these toxic emails and false alarms, to say the least. The concern with the emails, it's not that we shouldn't be expressing our differences or concerns or problems that come before us, but it's how we end up expressing them. The emails that have been coming of late, and from you, Ben, have been quite derogatory, combative, and making personal attacks on the manager. It's sort of like getting an envelope in the mail that's stuffed with anthrax. These emails just become offensive. And it seems that the response is impulsive, it's overreactive, it ends up stirring this board and the public. It's oftentimes a misrepresentation of the facts, and it just creates a crisis, only to find out later that none of what was coming forth was collaborated or substantiated. And what concerns me is that there's not then an apology that follows when something like that happens, or even a change in the behavior. It seems to me that these things are driven by conspiracy, by contempt, and by vengeance. And we've been down this road so often in the course of this board for 2.5 years. It gets exhausting, it's frustrating, and it just shouldn't be. I think and finally, I think that these emails become divisive. I think they're dysfunctional. I think they undermine the board and the staff, and I think they do a disservice to the public. I think that when problems are presented to us, and I hear a lot of different problems that come out from different members of the community, I listen to what's being said. I, try to understand it. Sometimes I'll call management, sometimes I'll talk to board members, but I always try to look for, how do we resolve this? It doesn't have to right away become a crisis, a combative, argumentative, a put down of people. That's so unnecessary. What it should be is it should be an opportunity for us to discuss the problem. And a lot of times things come up that might have been just a misunderstanding. The whole idea with the painting, for instance. This thing got completely blown out of proportion. Mark was ridiculed with these emails, derogatory emails, and it turned out that there had been a mistake. Well, shit happens. Mistakes happen. It's okay, but then you move on from that. So what I want to say that as a board, I really think that we have to look at what it is that the way we present our differences and the way we communicate with each other. It should always be in a respectful, professional manner. And these toxic emails have to stop because they're just disheartening when you see them. So that's what I want to say tonight.
Thank you, Norm. Lisa? Good? Kim?
Just a couple things. First of all, I just want to say the painting looks great. They look great. So, enough of the gloom. But, and happy birthday to Miss Lisa.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, lighten it up.
Bill?
I've got a couple things. First of all, I want to clarify a comment I made about Crawford Road earlier. It's not that I don't care what's going on at Crawford Road. I do care. Tragic situations have happened out there. Something needs to be done. I realize that, but I just don't know the answers. Second comment is, I mentioned it earlier, late fees for water and shut-offs. We've definitely got to address that. I mean, within the last week, I've had 2 citizens come up to me that have had their water shut off. One was on a board, one of our boards. His water was shut off because he was late 2 days on his payment. He was in Florida. He's not too happy. Third thing is parks. I agree we need to do more on our parks. We've got a beautiful park over here. I'd like to see us do more with it. And thanks to the people that do work out there. That's it.
Bill?
Yeah, Ben. I'd like to request that we see what the park maintenance schedule is as far as opening schedule and maintenance of items at this park, Donald Park. I'm really disappointed in your management of the meeting tonight, Ben. The speaker was going over time, the allocated time, and making demeaning comments. And you were, privy to that, you saw that, and almost with glee, you allowed him to continue, even though you stated time is up. But yeah, go on, continue with the inappropriate comments in this venue. And I will also say that I think that Norm was right on the mark when he mentioned your, as you termed them, toxic emails that you sent out in the last few days. You know, I called you on the phone,
Yep.
told you personally about how your words create discord and don't help us out as a board at all, and particularly the comments you made about the township manager were totally unfitting of you and certainly inaccurate of Mark's performance. When you use terms such as positioning for failure or whatever those shock and awe terms that you choose to send out to all of us, it's totally disturbing, and it doesn't do you a bit of good. It doesn't build up your credibility a bit. It detracts from your credibility. I want to thank everybody that came to the cleanup day. Mark and Jennifer and Bill were there. Mark and Bill were picking the tough jobs, unloading the wagons and cars that had all the stinky trash and crappy carpet and big disgusting mattresses to throw into their rear load trash compactor. Jennifer and her daughter Lauren were there to help unload all the electronic scrap, televisions, computers, corded devices. We filled 2 25-foot box trucks with all that electronics. And then Mike Lyon and Art DiLorenzo was there unloading a lot of scrap metal out of our constituents' vehicles that got recycled. And I'm sure we'll have more detail on specifics of volumes later. But 201 cars came through that day. So
2 ping pong tables. The truck driver said they'd never seen ping pong tables before, and we got 2 in one day.
2 in one day. It's a dying sport.
Dying sport.
Good one.
Go Forrest Gump that.
So I'd like to take 90 seconds or so and read to the board, and probably most particularly to the chairman of the board, Ben as our supervisor. Some ideas I jotted down. The Board of Trustees at Union Township is a 7-member board and is the top link of the chain of command. However, the board authority is only as a group. The board shall govern lawfully and ethically with an emphasis on outward vision rather than an internal preoccupation, and a strategic leadership more so than administrative detail. The board's work is to be proactive rather than reactive, and collective rather than individual in decision-making and fiscal budgeting development. This requires the board to understand and accept the clear distinction of its role and that of the manager-superintendent's role as charged by the board through our operating manual policy governance. As I reflect on the past actions, current situations, and discussion with township citizens, it is my belief that our township supervisor, Mr. Gunning, often fails to perform within the established parameters and limitations as described in the Union Township Board Manual. His actions and attitudes have negatively impacted the work and morale of the board, our professional management, and the Union Township staff. It's disappointing our supervisor doesn't take a positive attitude towards problem solving and instead chooses to lay blame on our township management and create an atmosphere of negativity. We've been down this road quite continuously for the term of this board. Just another stab to state my observations as 1/7 of this board. I would also like to, again, agree that parks is such a vital part of what makes citizens happy and think highly of our township. State tournaments coming up. I know we had talked about a whole list of things that needed to be done. Painting, which is going on. To me, there appears to be a lot of painting that is needed throughout. Field condition, which would include weed control. I hope we're on track and look forward to a really exciting tournament here in the city and township.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
I guess my first response is I'm going to give Mr. McLean all the opportunity in the world that he wants to speak. So he doesn't come forward very often. He's been around for a long time. I respect him. I respect the opinions that he makes. That's public comment. So it is what it is. On the other front, I personally think it's unacceptable that it took 7 months to get an assistant into the assessor's office. There was ample time. The resignation was put in, or retirement notice was put in on October 1st. We should have had somebody in place by the 1st of the year. Bill talked about it before when he talked about the timing of hiring. Going into the 1st of the year, an accountant, that's when they're busy. That's when they need to have help. Going into the 1st of the year, that's when the assessing department needs help. They need to have a full-time assistant. This is a big job. It's a big jurisdiction. The concept that this woman had to fly it alone for the month of November or January, I think is ridiculous. Somebody could have been trained when we still had Jane Chaffee in place.
This sounds like a personnel issue. I'd like to make
Yeah.
a motion that
Yes.
we adjourn.
Well,
I
I'm sorry,
agree.
you guys
I
attacked me,
support.
and so that's going to be
Support.
my response. Is I think that we should have had that hire in place a lot earlier.
You're saying?
Motion to adjourn. Okay.
Norm?
What are we supposed to do with these lists that we made up that we're gonna use?